Hello and welcome to Story Untold. I'm Martin Bauman, and my guest this week is probably one of the few who can call themselves a breakdancing executive director. Mike Prosserman is the founder of Unity Charity, an organization that teaches the elements of hip-hop as a means of empowering youth. He also goes by the b-boy name Piecez, and he's traveled all over the world, competing against the world's best breakdancers and placing first in 22 international competitions. Unity is celebrating 10 years this year. It's reached over 100,000 youth across Canada. But for Mike, it all started as a way to express himself and find a bigger family. Here's his story. Mike, breakdancing has really taken you all over the world. I mean, Hong Kong, Japan, Italy, Sweden. I could probably keep going on and on. What have you taken away from all of these travels and the places that this passion has taken you?
Interesting question for sure. I mean, yeah, I've been blessed with the opportunity to connect with people all over the world and get to know all sorts of different folks who, probably never would have crossed my path if it wasn't for breaking and, having this pretty random but awesome skill. So it was very cool to essentially just meet people who are like-minded, even though, again, I may have never crossed paths with these folks. I get to know people on the other side of the world who share similar values, or we have hilarious conversations, or just share these moments that are just super special. And it just feels like I'm part of some sort of secret club that, makes it okay for me to connect on this level that most human beings don't get to connect to, especially with complete strangers.
So you are the founder of Unity Charity, and my own experience with Unity, I remember first hearing about the kind of stuff that you guys were doing as I went off to university and I was looking for a club to get a part of, and there was a Western chapter of Unity, and so I came into my passion at Western through Unity. What was it that got you into breaking and hip-hop in the first place?
Yeah, for sure. For me, breaking was it was just like an outlet. It was like a community for me that I felt accepted by. And, the real thing to me was people appreciated me for something that, I thought was cool myself, but actually they began to think that I was valuable to this particular community, particularly my crew. Like, they thought, like, wow, this kid's pretty good at this. Maybe he could help us win some battles. But that also became a friendship that lasted for, my whole life with these same men, so and women. But, at that time, mostly men, unfortunately. Hip-hop is often predominantly male-driven. But, I won't get so into that. The real piece was these guys were my brothers, and that we felt that sense of camaraderie, but also connection. And I don't know, I didn't really get to that level of depth with many of my, other friends. I do have a few close friends, but these became that core group for me that really became my support network when I needed it most, but also, just became those dudes that I could be silly with and catch up with immediately without any, further depth besides just seeing each other and being like, hey, and, having these inside jokes and moments that we shared that we can just reconnect with automatically. And to me, that crew vibe is something that's very hard to describe, but it's something that really made me gravitate towards breaking because it became like a family, and it still is. So that feeling, and it's not about competitions, it's not about battling, it's just about hanging out and being, connected to these, like I said before, very different individuals from where I come from, but we still get to know each other at that deep level because we all come together for this common art form, which is breaking.
One of the earliest times, if not the first time, I've heard the story, you saw it at a bar mitzvah. Can you tell me the story of that?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I used to do gymnastics when I was like a little kid, so I was always like upside down and loved doing that. And I am, a white Jewish b-boy, so definitely inspired by this one moment, which was really funny and awesome, but more just awesome when I look back on what it actually was. Yeah, I used to go to these friends' bar mitzvahs. Like when you turn 13 years old, it's like the coming of age for a man in the Jewish culture and the Jewish religion. And I went to this bar mitzvah, and they had these breakers who were performing, and those breakers just happened to be, Migas, Mighty Mouse, Gadget, and what others may know as the Boogie Brats. And at the time, I had no idea. All I saw was this one guy do a handstand, which I love to do, and he spun in circles on one hand, and I was just like, whoa, that is something I need in my life. So I decided to, just start figuring out how to learn this form of dance in any way, shape, or form. So I went to breakdance.com, the worst site in the universe that no longer exists, but really I got to give it all credit, because I wouldn't be breaking if it wasn't for that silly and ridiculous site that unfortunately doesn't exist anymore, because it was quite hilarious. This is before the YouTube days, and there were no videos or streaming abilities at that time, so there were literally text descriptions of moves that were debatably moves to begin with. Now that I look back, like ninja star, rollback, and weird things that I question, like, was that really an actual, was that who made these moves up anyways? Like, was it really legit? Either way, though, they'd have these text descriptions of moves that were almost impossible to follow, because it'd say, like, put your left hand in front of your right foot and just jump, or, like, it was just ridiculous. So, looking back, I finally, like, hilariously enough, learned a lot from that after being inspired at this bar mitzvah. But then I finally found, like, a legit teacher who is Benzo from Bag of Tricks, and he became a big mentor to me even to this day, and just really took me under his wing and really showed me everything about breaking, not just the moves and the techniques, but brought me to parties and brought me to events, and really got me involved in the culture. So, what evolved from a very innocent sighting of a very unique art form turned into, like, this community that I very quickly got accepted by and became, really part of.
That same kind of time frame, 12, 13 years old, a lot was going on for you at the time. Your mother was dealing with schizophrenia, and there was a lot of strain as far as your parents goes. What did dancing do for you at that time to be able to sort through those things that you're going through?
Yeah, I mean, for me, definitely my life experiences sort of molded my path, and I'm thankful of everything that's happened to me over the years, just because it made me the person that I am. And, I have no regrets, nor I have no hard feelings about certain sort of life lessons that I've gone through. And yeah, many of them have had to do with just family stuff that has come across my path, and has just forced me to rise to the occasion. And again, it's, to me, never been anything even remotely negative, more just being there for family, and when they need me most, and caring for them, and just kind of taking care of what needs to get taken care of, because sometimes you don't have a choice, right? And fortunately, that built a lot of character for who I became and who I am now. I say luckily, because who knows what could have happened in that time, because my head was pretty all over the place, and I really didn't have any clear direction. Like, my dad was really thankfully supportive, and helped me through a lot of that stuff. I mean, for anyone who knows him, he was the b-boy dad who, like, showed up to battles wearing, like, graffiti hats and always taking me to events. So if he didn't really support me to get into breaking, I don't think I ever would have really fit into any particular scene, and probably gotten lost with everything else going on in my life. So, to me, breaking was that core rock that I had. My crew was that core family, in addition to my dad and my mom. And yeah, I think that hip-hop culture really uniquely became a part of my life. And I find it's different for every person. Hip-hop identifies as a a part of people's existence for a variety of reasons, and everyone's to me is so valid. And it's also so interesting because we all come together for different reasons, but we all come together at the same time because we love this one thing. We don't even have to really be that good at it.
You mentioned your dad at that time in your life taking you to clubs, getting you in for competitions as you were just getting into it. Tell me about that, having him there, and maybe the first memory that you have of being 13 years old, competing against guys that were significantly older than you, and having your dad have to bring you inside just to get into the competition.
Yeah, no, those were funny memories. Actually, I had like long hair, braces, super awkward, like very quiet, wearing like cargo pants, like brown cargo pants, and a bright yellow t-shirt and a blue headspin toque. And I wore the same thing to every single battle. And so did my dad, hilariously enough. He wore these orange pants, which I still don't understand why, but they were his favorite orange pants. And this graffiti cap that said like Bboy Piecez or something like that, or B-Boy Daddy-O. And yeah, it was just, when you're doing something, you don't always like reflect on it. Like, it's interesting to think back on it now, because in the moment it was just like this feeling of pure adrenaline when I went to the battles. Because first I didn't even know what a battle was, and someone called me out, and I didn't even know that we were battling. I thought he was actually fighting me, and I was just super confused. Like, why is this person like dance fighting me? Like, what the hell is going on? This was at like some random practice spot, and I really didn't know how to respond. But then when I started getting to the battle scene, back to the underground at La Casa de Hall, where they did these jams, it felt like kind of like a superhero at times. Like, you could kind of get the crowd, and at that time the crowd was much more into it and much more hype, but like to literally just lose it just by showing them something that they've never seen before. And that was just like, as a young person going through all this stuff, the most important feeling that I could have had at the time, because it was reaffirming to me that something I was doing was good, and not just good, but like really freaking good. And then I had members of my crew and the crews that I'd enter with depending on me to kill it in the battle, and I just had this raw energy. Like, I could dance for 5 hours a day every day of the week at that time and still not injure myself. And it was all just based on this like pure raw adrenaline that I would get. And the best way I could describe it was, certain moves of mine that no one else could do and no one else had seen, like the slow headspin that I used to do back in the day was just like unheard of. So every time I did it, people would just like totally lose their minds, and it was like the coolest feeling to be able to do that to people, to like literally have them see something that they can't even believe, and then as they're experiencing that, you're kind of almost in control of this emotion that everyone together is feeling. And it's like nothing I could ever describe. It's just like this really really freaking cool feeling. And it's not an ego thing, it's not anything to do with that. It's just this feeling that like people really appreciate you and really genuinely are on the edge of their seats of what's going to happen next. And it's just like, it's very exciting. And I those were my favorite times of breaking, when I had people on that edge with me, even though I didn't know what I was doing, because I was freestyling, like I was making it up as I was going. So having people follow me on that journey and really be behind me at that time was just like something I can't describe in words.
It's got to be a confidence booster to have that kind of reaction, especially when you're going out on a limb and freestyling, and you don't know what your next move is going to be. It's got to be slightly terrifying too, to think about, where am I going to go next with this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just had this. I mean, things have changed quite a bit back in the day since to now in terms of what people look for in breaking. So, I can honestly say that, even though I might have been crashing a little bit more then, I found it was more about taking risks and being yourself back in the day. Now it's more about just having a perfect style where you don't sort of crash. And it's pretty evident. Like, if you watch videos from the late 90s, like, it's almost I wouldn't call it laughable, but it's like it's more about pushing the dance and the different sort of techniques and moves that you could do, and now it's more about having this complete set that lasts a certain amount of time with a certain amount of each portion of the dance in it, which I still don't fully agree with. I still just do what I do because I do this because it feels good, not to win a competition. But, you know, a lot of young people are pushed into this new model of this new formula of dance that, you know, you can definitely watch YouTube videos from the late 90s and early 2000s, and that formula was not there. It was like not even close to there. It didn't exist. So to me, like, I feel like we're losing a lot of originality, and not just originality, but like personality in breaking. And that's unfortunate because there's so many people doing it now, and they're all just trying to have this certain flow, this certain formula that really limits the dance, and it really limits how far we can push the boundaries with this dance, because it has to be about winning the competition, not about expressing your story.
I mean, that sounds like hip-hop as a whole right now. People wanting to follow whatever is currently in vogue, and being afraid to take risks in a certain sense. What about the name Piecez? Where did you come to have that name?
It's a good question. It's actually pretty random, but kind of funny, I guess. I used to go to Benzo at his studio to learn, and that's actually where I met my crew, which is MEC, Maximum Efficiency Crew. And some of the members of MEC, the earlier members, used to practice at Benzo's class. And this one guy just kind of saw me just going, like, bugging out, going off and like doing some crazy handstand 90 stuff, like stacking is what we call it in breaking, which is like, you know, the handstand balance stuff, going from a freeze up to a handstand, going from your elbow up to a handstand, like all these different techniques that you sort of essentially stack freezes on top of each other. And I was doing that, and this guy just kind of screamed out in a very loud voice, and a lot of people know this guy for being relatively loud member of our crew, but he's just like, yo man, and he's like you look like Crumbs. I'm like, who's Crumbs? And then he like showed me later who Crumbs was, and he's like, yo, I need to call you something like Crumbs. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure, man. I was like, as a kid, I'm like, what do you mean call me? Like, I didn't even know like breaking names existed. And then he's like, you're either gonna be Pieces or Chunks. And I'm like, I'll take Pieces.
I would take Piecez too.
Yeah, Chunks sounds super weird. But anyways, yeah, later on, actually, Crumbs became a big influence of mine after watching him in, you know, VHS tapes like Freestyle Session 3 and 4. And just like his style of stacking freezes was something that I wanted to sort of innovate from, and you know, I was really inspired by that. Similarly, how to when I first saw in 1990 at that bar mitzvah, I'm like, I need that. When I saw the stacking stuff, I'm like, whoa, I can really evolve this style and this idea. And other folks like Cujo, Crazy Cujo, are other big influences to me of people I just watched and was like, whoa, these guys are pushing the limits of human strength and possibility. And you know, I want to do that in my own way, not like them, but in whatever way I can push the limits of human boundaries through this dance. I would like to do that as well, and that's sort of the path I pursued as a breaker.
So we talked about your origins. What about Unity? How did the charity Unity begin?
Yeah, Unity started back as a high school class project in grade 11 for me. So I was in this entrepreneurship class that they assigned a project where we needed to essentially run a venture, they called it, and write a business plan and donate the proceeds to a charity. And we could choose what the venture would be, write this business plan, and what charity we would support. So I decided to, you know, take it over from my group and like just pretty much say we're going to do something cool even if it's more work. And that's what we did. We ran this event called Hip Hop Away from Violence at the time, which essentially was a concert where we called every hip hop artist we knew or even didn't know, and cold called them and said, "Do you want to perform for free for this show that we're doing at our high school?" And it's in support of this charity called Leave Out Violence that does some photojournalism programming with youth in Lawrence Heights. And we just ran this event. We wrote this business plan. First year, we kind of failed. Like, it was pretty crappy, to be honest. It wasn't what I would call a success necessarily, but there was something inside of me that knew there was some serious potential here with this idea. And if we put everything into it next year, we could, take it to the next level. So that year I ran to be on student council, and I ran to be the president, which I got, which was funny because then I could take all the resources, or as much as I could, from student council and put it into this event and run a kick-ass show, which is pretty much what we did. And we had a concert then for like 400 students, and it was rammed after school. We had like 15 or even probably closer to 18 hip-hop artists from GTA who were like still doing it, who performed. And like, I have photos from this event, and looking back, it's just so awesome. And my dad, in spirits that he always is, decided to dress up as Barney and come on stage, and that was another random part of that event, just echoing that weird way that my dad supports me but always is behind what I'm doing, and been super proud all the way along the journey. But just to sort of paint that picture, but it started really as a grassroots high school project. And when I went to York, I registered as a student club. I also am the board of directors of Leave Out Violence, the charity that we donated to, because they saw the idea was starting to take off. And then I just learned everything about charities from them. I took notes from their board meetings. I highlighted things. I asked questions. And I very quickly learned how to run a charity through that experience. And then as I went through university and we had this student club at York, which we renamed to Unity at York, I decided, you know what, I really want to do this and keep doing this Unity thing, which it was now called, but do it for my full time if I can, and keep sharing this outlet with other young people. And we just registered as a nonprofit in my last year at York, registered as a charity soon after, even though that we also got denied for and had to reapply, which was a pain in the ass. I would say pretty much most things we've done, we failed at least once the first time, and then just sort of stood back up and, went at it again. And I think that's pretty much the reason why we still exist, is we didn't give up. And 10 years after that date that we got registered, we're still standing and doing this work a decade later. And, obviously it's evolved and changed since then, but, its core roots are with hip hop and the people who started it. So yeah, that's kind of the full journey of how Unity got founded.
What does chicken suit have to do with the origins of Unity?
That is a fantastically important question. I don't really know. I think back in the day when I used to run these shows, firstly, my dad dressing up in Barney suits probably had some sort of influence on me. I could start by saying that. I mean, most people's parents don't show up in costumes to your important events, but my dad definitely does. But aside from that possibility, which might have been a small connection, I would also say that at all these events we used to do, I used to like doing something that was a total surprise that no one knew was happening. And it was like not planned, not scripted, not even rehearsed. So there would literally just be a section in the schedule for a mystery performance. And I just weirdly liked that because it was like a funny concept that you would go to an event with a total mystery performance that you have no idea what you're going to get. Although sometimes the glamour of how ridiculous a mystery performance could even be would be enough to bring more people out because they're like, what the hell is this mystery performance? Why is this so weird? And in my style of being weird, I'm like, this is perfect. So every year we had a mystery performance. And one year I dressed up in a chicken suit and did this weird routine that I also hilariously practiced in my basement and one day video recorded, which is my by far most popular video on YouTube. It's almost like 500,000 hits. sadly. But then also we've had like fire jugglers, we've had yo-yo specialists, hacky sack guys. We had someone break a brick with their face as one of the secret performances. And it was funny enough because they wouldn't let us do that in the venue, so we actually had to go outside for this like sort of dude to break this brick because we wanted to do something totally random, which was definitely that. We've had ninjas, as they like, we called them, breakers versus ninjas. They were these like extreme martial arts guys who we used to train with, and we did like a battle against the breakers versus the Team Ryuko guys. And just anything we could do to make it more interesting. So the chicken suit sort of stemmed from this mystery performance. And I think the chicken suit really came from way back in the day. I went to this show at El Macombo, and it was one of the, like, right when I turned 19, so I could start going to clubs. And I go into this show, and I don't remember what the hell it was, but there were 3 people dressed in animal costumes dancing. And, like, I just found this to be the funniest thing. Like, it was so random. Like, it was the most random. And I don't do drugs. I've never done drugs, just for the record, to clarify. This was just straight up hilarious. Like, I just went to this club and these animal characters were dancing to this band, and it was really just a cover band, like this random band playing like energetic music. But the fact that these animal costume like people were dancing to it, I was just like, I was loving it, and it just made everything so much better. So like, I realized that, at least for me, maybe not everyone feels this way, but things in animal costumes are like exponentially better than things not in animal costumes.
Right around this time, as Unity is growing from a high school project into a club at university, that time frame, 18 years old, you find out that you have fused vertebrae. And for a guy who has become accustomed to spinning on his head, that changes things. What did that mean for you as far as your dancing went? And then how did that change your focus as far as putting more time into Unity itself?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, I definitely, finding out about my fused vertebrae in my neck and that whole process and time in my life was pretty rough for me. I mean, it was definitely not good information at the time in which I was really most seriously pursuing my dancing career. It kind of felt like a hopeless moment where, I literally had to stop pursuing the thing that I loved the most, which I was pretty wrong about, but at the time that's just what felt like had to be done based on what the doctor was saying, and accurately so. It was, it is quite dangerous to dance with the condition that I have, but I decided at the end of the day I need to live my life, and I want to live every moment to the fullest. And if dancing isn't part of my life, it's like, it feels like just not the same. And it's really hard to describe, when someone literally tells you you can't do the thing that you are most excited about doing, and you're not allowed to do it anymore. And I just at first accepted it, and for 3 years I learned how to do house dancing. I went to clubs and started popping, and I did all this stuff. Nothing was competitive ever, but I definitely found that it was a place for me to, at least be part of that community still. It wasn't the same. And that neck injury, as, I might call it, it was like something that changed my life forever. It made me put things into perspective, that it wasn't about being that competitive b-boy. That wasn't the point. It was like this community that I became part of, as I said before, this crew that I got to join and be sort of connected to, as I said before. And for me, that was the true value of this dance for me. It just put everything into perspective. Sometimes they say you have to go through some real life stuff to look at the world through a different lens. And that was one of those moments where I literally, my whole view of the world of breaking changed, because it wasn't important to win every battle, which I did do when I was younger. It was much more about the community, crew, the vibes, the party, the cipher, all these different things that were so beautiful that I didn't have in my life before breaking. So, and from a unity standpoint, at first I was just like, oh shit, like, unity is sort of built on the fact that I am a b-boy, and I have to be a b-boy in order to run this thing. But then again, I was wrong twice. I don't need to prove myself or be winning a battle just to be running a hip-hop based organization. At the same time, I do think that that is a big part of Unity's success, that we were from this hip-hop culture and we were sharing this hip-hop culture. So it wasn't just, it wasn't someone from the outside making decisions for the culture. It was, not just me, but other members of the community teaching and sharing and being part of this organization. So it did give me some perspective that, no, I don't have to be winning battles to be running a hip-hop based charity, but I should still maintain the pulse of what's real and what's not, because at the end of the day, the high quality programming and the high quality work will come from the real people, not from, people who are faking the funk.
One of the things that you've written about is the power of building bridges and maintaining relationships. You talk about mountains that are built from snowflakes. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I mean, I believe relationships is kind of everything. And, I don't know, I find people to me are, always reaching out and trying to connect. And I always spend time with anyone who ever reaches out with me, because I always see that there's a possibility that I could learn something and share something and exchange something with any human being that, is on this planet, whether it's like a little kid or even a baby up to, someone who's, about to turn 100 years old, or, a young person who is learning to dance, or the president of a big company. I feel like there's something to learn from everyone. So mentorship has been a huge part of my journey, and just asking a shit ton of questions to people who have very specific experiences that I want to learn about. I always say that we're like sponges with Unity team. We bring in these mentors, and oftentimes they'll give us some of their time, but they don't really have to give us that much of that time, because we can very quickly emulate and learn their approach, or at least what we like out of their approach, and extract that for what we're doing. Because I believe anything that you put out there is possible. Anything that you dream up is more or less possible. It's just like, how do you get there? And that seems to be the big gap for a lot of entrepreneurs or people starting stuff, is they overthink, they overplan, they overworry, they over sit in a room coming up with ideas. And you got to do that. But like, if you don't sort of hit the ground running and start meeting people and building relationships and doing, like, sometimes I'm too much of a doer and I pay for it. But I still think that to me has been the most important thing, is going out there, meeting people, building those relationships, in unrealizing that we're building bridges that actually created successful moments for us that wouldn't have existed if I wasn't out there meeting people, if I wasn't out there running programs before we were ready to run those programs, and, meeting people that I had not really sure what I was even there to talk to them about, except I thought they could help in some way, like, I spent 90% of my time doing stuff and 10% of it thinking about that stuff. And that was really what made Unity successful, not sort of sitting at home writing the best business plan or talking about weird buzzwords like inclusive something something or collective blah blah blah. Like, there's too many buzzwords these days that people spend their whole lives studying and have never gone out there and done stuff. And I have no hate on any person who's trying to make a positive impact on this world, but like, we gotta definitely get ourselves out in the field doing stuff, and stop sitting around tables that don't include people that we're representing, and just start keep talking about these things versus going on the field and having a conversation with a young person, going into a program and just running it and trying things out. Because to me, like, we live too much in our heads. And, I do that. I'm a product of that sometimes too, but we really have to break out of that and just start interacting with people, meeting people, doing the things we're thinking of doing, and stop making buzzwords that make it inaccessible to people, because people don't know what the fuck we're talking about, and it's just not helping anyone by coding things in weird language that no one can understand.
You mentioned already Unity is celebrating 10 years this year. When you look back on the journey that it's been up until this point, what comes to mind out of all these years?
Just really, I just get happy when I think about it. Like all the people that we've interacted with that have been involved with Unity, like there's been so many faces from the youth that we've got to connect with and hang out with and share with and learn from, to the board members, to the artists who've been involved. Like we've had some of the best artists like in the world, teach and work with us, and I got to become best friends with a lot of them. To our staff who are just like freaking incredible at what they do. So to me, it's all about the people, and I've just been so fortunate to be able to meet people from took this idea of breaking where I said I got to meet all these interesting people and multiplied it by 1,000,000. Like I got to meet so many interesting people, and they all got to be part of this really cool thing that they were passionate about in their own way. So to me, it's very similar to my journey with breaking. It's like we all came together because we love this dance. Well, we all came together because we want to make this change in the world through hip hop. And to me, that was really interesting, that parallel, because, I'm always continuing the things in my life that are really meaningful to me, and trying to bring those into all the elements of my life. And to me, to be able to do that for a decade, for 10 years, although it's painfully stressful and I sometimes want to like run away if you talk to me in between the more stressful moments, but there's nothing more worth it looking back. And the people that I've met along the way are just, it's something for life. I'll never forget it. Even if we stop tomorrow, I will forever be thankful.
Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, buddy. Nice to reconnect. And yeah, it's been cool.
That's it for the show. Thanks for listening, and I hope you liked it. Mike is a guy I came to know a little bit a few years back when I was planning my own hip-hop showcase. Unity Festival runs this July 13th to 15th. It's free. Events happen all across Toronto. And if you like the show, it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher. Go ahead and subscribe. You can also help me out by leaving a rating or pass it along to someone you think might enjoy it. Theme music for the show is by Dr. Turtle off the album You I'll Ah. I'm Martin Baumann, and this was The Story Untold. See you next time.